Hey folks, today I got a new gun that I'm going to show you, and it's literally a new gun. It just came out. I figured I'd pick one up and test it out and see what I think about it. But today we're going to look at the Springfield Echelon. Stand by and I'll give you my thoughts. All right, what I got today is this little Springfield Echelon. If you look at it, it's shockingly similar to a Glock, all right, which is not a bad thing. I know I've never owned one, but they said that it's like a large version of a Springfield Hellcat, and maybe it is. I don't know. I've never owned a Hellcat, but I have owned tons of Glocks, and this is strikingly similar to a Glock in its profile and its look. I'm going to go over this gun and tell you a few things that I like about it. I'm also going to tell you a few things that I don't like about it. But let's get this started off by saying I like that they all come from the factory with an optics mount. Man, that should be standard nowadays. Not everybody wants to mount an optic, but there are a lot of people out there that do. This one comes standard with an optics mount, and it should. All new guns, if they're being designed in 2022, 2023, 2020, they should come standard with an optics mount, because more than 50% of the shooters out there are putting optics on their guns now. It also comes with a real good set of sights. If you can see, it's got a real bright, almost green luminescent front sight, and it's got a U-notch rear sight. Now, with that U-notch rear sight, I probably will black out that white ring there. Not a big fan of having color on my rear sights. I only want color on my front sight. Only time will tell. I hadn't even shot the gun yet. This is literally my first impressions of it. So I'm going to leave it like it is right now. And after I shoot it, I'll make a determination whether I want to black that rear U-notch out. Let's talk about the look of the gun first, because when people see it, their first impression is going to be the look of the gun. It's a pretty handsome gun. To be honest with you, and I'm just being honest here, folks, first of all, nobody sent me this gun. I paid my own money for this gun. I paid $600 for this gun. It's a little higher than some, a little less than others. So I paid $600 for this gun. I paid my own money, so you're going to get my honest opinion of this gun. And I know there were some YouTube guys that got their hands on them early, and I've heard nothing but good things about the gun. So I wanted to get it for myself and see if I felt the same way. But anyway, aesthetics of the gun, the way it looks. I'll say this gun is a handsome gun. To me, it looks like a modified Glock, one that's been tricked out with nice slide cuts, nice sights, good texture on the grip, high cut trigger guard, and we'll talk about the trigger here in a minute. But it looks, under first impressions, a lot like a Glock. What I will tell you, it will not fit in a Glock holster. I've tried them all. This part of the frame right here, it's a ledge for you to put your thumb on while you're shooting. It's quite a bit wider than a Glock. I tried to put it in my Safariland holster. I tried to put it in some of the holsters that I make, and it's not going to work. This part of the frame right here is quite a bit wider than a Glock. I'm sure there's some other differences, but I noticed when I started to put it in the holster, this part bound up first. So it is not going to work in a Glock holster, even though it looks a lot like a Glock 17, actually. Talked about the mill cuts on there. They're nice. They're very tactile, easy to get a good purchase up front. In the rear, they're doing something similar to the HK-VP9. With the HK-VP9, underneath the rear sight, they have a plastic ear that comes down on either side, and it gives you a purchase in the rear to make it easier to cycle the slide with. Well, with the Springfield, what they've done is they've milled the slide thin right here, and they put those ears right here to help you manipulate the slide. They're actually metal. so they don't come off. They won't break like an HKVP9's will, but it does, without an optic on there, it does give you something to manipulate the gun with. That's pretty nice. Another thing that I really like, is that the slide stops are abbreviated. They're very small. If you look at them, they're very, very small. They don't hang over. So people that shoot with a high thumbs grip, where that thumb hangs over, they're probably not going to have a big problem with pushing down on that slide stop and making the slide close on the last round. A lot of people that shoot Glocks, their thumbs will rest on that slide stop, and SIGs as well, especially the P226, 229s, 220s. When they lay their thumb up there on the last shot, they're holding down on the slide stop, and the slide closes, and there's nothing in the chamber. To me, that's a grip modification that needs to be done. But with this one, I don't think you're going to have any problem with it. It's ambidextrous. The slide stops are on both sides. You do have a magazine release on the right-hand side of the gun and the left-hand side of the gun. And I'm going to show you something real quick. I push on the mag release, and it will, well, it's not going to do it now, but it's been sticking on me. When I go to eject the magazine release has been sticking out on me. Now, when I take a magazine and I put it back in, it pops right back out. But up until just right there on camera, it's been sticking. And that's a little concerning, but I think it'll work itself out. I think it's just tight tolerances in the plastic. It's going to work itself out. I do like these ledges they put on either side, so you can have a place to rest your thumb. If you shoot a high thumbs forward grip, you got a place to rest your thumb to help control some of that recoil. They're on both sides. The texture of the gun. I like this texture on this gun. It's not abrasive. It doesn't even feel that grippy until you bear down on it. When you bear down on it in your hand, it really grips your skin. I like that. All guns coming from the factory nowadays should have some texture on them, so that when you grab that gun and maybe your hands are wet, or bloody or greasy, whatever, then your gun is not going to slip in your hands. You've got a good purchase on that gun. Another thing I like is they take that texture all the way up to the top of the frame right there. I like that because the meaty part of your hand right here will dig in up top. So it all helps control recoil. They have different back straps. With the back straps, there's a button in here you can push, and this back strap will pull off. There's a button right there that goes into the frame, and you can take that off, and there's 3 back straps. There's a small, medium, and large. This one is the small one. The hump, it does have a Glock style hump, and that hump is lower on the frame than what a traditional Glock hump is. Let's see if I can get this thing back on here. I put it on earlier, and it was a little bit of a pain. There we go. Got it back on. So if you look at the hump on here, the hump is down low, okay? It's nice and flat right here, and then the hump starts about right here and flares out. I like that because of the way it sits in my hand. It makes the muzzle not want to point too high. All right, with a Glock, that hump can be a little higher, and it makes the gun want to point a little high. It makes the muzzle a little high. Now, the other back straps that they had, the hump is a little higher up. So if you're really used to shooting Glocks and you only shoot Glocks, that might be the back strap you want. The trigger reach from here to here is nice and short. I like that. I have short fingers, and that's a big deal to me. I like to have a short trigger reach. The optics mount on here, it's pretty interesting. I'll say that. I don't know if it's going to be good. I don't know if it's going to be bad. It doesn't require optics plates. You have little pins that sit down in the correct holes, the corresponding holes for whatever optic you're going to use, and they are your recoil bosses. when I put that on there, I set the red dot down onto the pins. I tried to move it front and back, and it was nice and snug. That's a good thing because it takes the pressure off of your screws back here. Your screws, just to give you a little insight into it, I guess you could say. I'm no expert, but to give you a little insight into it, your recoil bosses that stick up out of the frame, they keep the optic from moving front to back. All right. Your screws, their only job is to clamp that optic down. They shouldn't have to take any of the pressure front and rear. Screws have strong clamping ability, but they don't have strong shearing force to resist against shearing force. Shearing force would be back and forth, breaking that screw head. They are very strong clamping down. They're not very strong at preventing shearing force. That's where those recoil bosses come into play. And it seems like a good idea. Only time will tell, like I said. But we'll have to see out on the range if this thing holds up. It will accept a large number of optics. If it's an RMR footprint, it's going to accept it. If it's a Delta Point Pro footprint, it's going to accept it. If it's a Shield RMS footprint, it's going to accept it. The only thing that I know right off the bat that it's not going to accept is most, not all, but most enclosed emitters. Now, I know the SIG Romeo, was it the Romeo 2, is it? That is enclosed. It'll accept that because it still clamps down from the top. But the ones that use a pick rail or a style of a pick rail to clamp onto, it won't accept those for right now. I'm sure there's going to be plates coming for it, but as of right now, it's not accepting those. Now, I saw some videos where people raved about the trigger. All right. I'm going to show you the trigger, and then I'm going to show you the trigger pull, and then I'm going to tell you about the trigger. So there is a reasonable amount of uptake or pre-travel in that trigger. All right. No different than a Glock. It's about the same amount that a Glock has. The only difference is it's much smoother than a Glock. The pre-travel is much smoother. It's much lighter than in a Glock. There's a defined wall there. And then if you'll watch the trigger. There's a little bit of creep, and then it breaks. Now, on the reset, you're going to see, let's let it out, right there, and then it breaks again. Let me get my trigger pull gauge out, and we will test the pull weight on this thing and see what it's coming in at. I'm going to say it's coming in the high 4s to low 5s. That's just what it feels like to me. But let's see what it actually comes in at. I'm going to try to pull from the middle of the trigger because that's usually where your finger is when you're pulling on these. Let's pull nice and slow. Comes in at 4.5 pounds, almost exactly. 4 pounds, 8 ounces. Let's try it one more time and see if we can get a similar pull weight on it. Pull nice and slow. This one came in just a touch over 5 pounds. So you're looking at between a 4.5 and 5 pound trigger, which isn't bad for a striker fired gun. It's really not. Now, I've had some people compare this, I've heard some people compare this trigger to a Walther PPQ or PDP. It is not. All right, I'm just going to be honest with you. This is not a Walther PDP trigger. It's a good trigger. It's much better than a Glock trigger, but the Walther PDP trigger and the PPQ trigger, man, that trigger for a striker fired gun is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. The initial break on it is phenomenal. Hardly any creep at all. And the reset on it is phenomenal. This one is not phenomenal. It's good. So you've got your uptake, your wall. You start to apply pressure. There's some movement, and then it breaks. Then you've got your reset, and it breaks. The reset, in my opinion, is about the same length as a Glock's reset, but it does feel easier to manipulate than a Glock. I'm not talking about the poundage. I'm just talking about the quality of the trigger and the ease of use of the trigger. Feels a little bit easier to manipulate than a Glock. Overall, I think this looks like a pretty good gun. One last thing. Let me lock this slide to the rear. Let's take it apart. I'm not going to take the chassis out, but this does have a chassis inside. You can take this pin out, your takedown pin, you remove it, and this chassis inside comes out much like a SIG 320. I have heard some people say that this is the SIG P320 killer. I don't believe that. Now, I'm not saying that it's not going to turn out to be a really good gun. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is I don't see this putting the SIG 320 out of business or really even hindering their sales that much at all. If anything, I think it will hinder the sales of the Glock, not the SIG P320. Overall thoughts on this gun. Initially, I like it. All right. I can only tell you my initial thoughts, not what I think about shooting it. I don't know yet. I'm going to take it out this weekend and I'm going to shoot it. But initially, this gun seems to be well thought out. I pointed out some good things. I pointed out some things that are questionable. And I pointed out one thing that I didn't like, this magazine release. It's sticky. It's sticky. I don't like that. The one big thing I don't like, knock me if you want to, but I am adamant about this, especially with American companies. We have probably the best firearms engineers in the world in America. All right? We just do. This gun was built alongside with the oversight of the engineers in Croatia, the ones that developed the XD and the XDM. Before it was the XD, it was the, can't remember what they called it. Before Springfield bought the rights to sell it, it was called something else, but it was the XD. It was a Croatian gun. Nothing wrong with Croatian guns. Nothing at all. I mean, Glock's an Austrian gun. But we have an American company that has a huge firearms presence in this country. They have all the machinery, all the engineers they could ever want. Why do we need to work hand in hand with Croatia to design a polymer frame gun? Do they not have engineers at Springfield smart enough and capable enough to engineer a polymer frame gun that will compete with Glock? It just kind of sticks in my craw. I'm sorry, I can't help it. This is America. We have the best of the best in this country. We really do. Comes to doctors, we got the best doctors. Comes to manufacturing, we've got the best manufacturing. When it comes to quality of manufacturing, we've got the best quality of manufacturing. When it comes to engineers in all aspects, we've got the best engineers. Why do we have to go to Croatia to get them to help us design a polymer frame gun that will compete with Glock? That's the one thing that really sticks on me. I can overlook that. I'm going to judge the gun based on its own merit. I'm not going to let that play into it. But I really just don't understand why Springfield Armory feels like they need to have Croatian engineers put input in on this gun. I just don't see why. If I'm wrong, tell me in the comments. But I don't think I'm wrong. It's my opinion. You're welcome to yours. I'm welcome to mine. Anyway, that's my initial thoughts on this Springfield Echelon. It seems like it's going to be a good gun, but only time will tell. I'm going to give you a range review, hopefully this weekend, maybe midweek. I don't know. It depends on when I can get out to the range and do a video on it. But anyway, the Springfield Echelon, the verdict's still out. We'll see how it goes. Thank y'all for stopping in, and y'all have a good one.